Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. We squeezed one last Sunday night in this season. Death, taxes, and the old firm making finals, Dave.
Crackers.
Let's
I mean,
let
sorry, that's my brunch bar. My brunch bar has got. I've cracked open a can of Diet Coke. Yeah, crackers. I think we'll talk about it in due course, but I actually think, having looked at just things across the last kind of 8 or 9 weeks, I think the two most together teams got to the
mm,
final.
mm,
I think the two most together, Newcastle because of the games they've played and the numbers down they are, and
mm,
Leicester because they've had a consistency of those guys all season with the same
mm,
team, with the
mm.
same unit. And I think togetherness in the playoffs makes just a massive, massive difference. And sometimes, and when you get to the last 5 games, you don't need 12 guys.
Yeah.
You
Well,
need,
it'll be seven aside next week,
you need,
won't
yeah, you
it?
need exactly. You need seven mother brothers who are going to play hard,
Yeah, yeah,
basically, and kill the win.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean the game I've just been at was exhilarating. I'm pretty sure the game you were at was
yeah.
exhilarating.
It was yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Wow.
Well, let's start in your end of the country,
Yeah.
Dave. We'll start with Friday night in London, which
Yeah.
is not your end of the country, but you know what I mean. Newcastle beat London 71-77. No Defoe, no Alan Ikens, so just 8 players listed for the Eagles.
Seven of them.
Neighbour, hey?
Only seven of them played.
Yeah, only 7 of them played. Yeah,
That's
Neighbour into the starting lineup, and Neighbour with 5 points had Eagles out 7-12 early on, but most of the first half was London up by a couple of scores.
Yeah, kind of a Lazarus style revival from Will Neighbour.
Yeah,
Insofar, to be fair, he has always been a very talented offensive player.
mm,
He's been getting them on the court and staying, keeping them on the court defensively. That's been the issue. And when you've matched it with London, you're going to have to use some size at some point. So I think Mark obviously thought the best way forward was just to throw him out there. The advantage that he kind of has playing against London as opposed to other teams is that London are pretty half court based.
mm,
They
mm,
were running transition opportunistically, but they've got big guys in there. Be it Delay, starting Delay, Hadzabegovic, etc. So it isn't going to be a situation where you're going to be able to space them out and kind of run them off the court. And he kind of I thought he held his own, quite well with the big guys in
mm,
London to start with. Um, it's a tough. When we did the two-legged playoffs, even when we won everything a couple of times, the hardest playoff game was the first leg of the semi-final,
mm,
always, because you were the first week you were in it, you were there, right? Then you're comfortable that you've won the game, and you're feeling good about yourself. And then there's another game, and it's and you're waiting for the second leg, and getting the guys up for the first leg is tough.
mm.
Now, Newcastle had the benefit of adversity.
Yeah.
They had the benefit of they were never. It was never going to be a hard game for them because nobody expected anything.
Mm,
I gather from somebody this evening, another reputable podcast indicated that they had a 0% chance of winning. That's not ours, but even so, they had nothing to lose. So
yeah,
they were just going to show up and play hard. And as Bozic said it before the game, he said, sometimes you have fewer players. They're not worried about making a mistake. They
yeah.
have to play. So the psychology of everything changes.
And and full disclosure, I watched. I was dual screening, but was more focused on the Sheffield Leicester game. So I watched this back with full concentration
Yeah.
on Saturday. But so I don't know whether I'm skewed by knowing the outcome. But
No,
it felt like London were just a little bit sort of, I don't know, discombobulated.
yeah.
They just
Not
didn't
as together.
felt right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's what I'm saying. That kind of that was, and for them, that the point I'm making is the third game in the playoffs, the first
Mm.
leg at home, particularly when you're expecting to come in against an undermanned team,
Yeah.
basically beaten quite comfortably when you played them at home earlier on, and you're feeling good about yourselves. And you've got the mayor in the building.
Yeah.
So it's an event.
Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
and for the other team just to roll over.
Yeah.
That was kind of the impression you got, that they were kind of waiting for the other team to roll over. Also, I mean, in mitigation, I think it's pretty clear that Rye wasn't 100%
Mm.
healthy. So after the game, he kind of limping away. He was unimpactful for a guy who's as good as he is
Yeah,
and as
yeah. Both
good as
legs.
he is, both legs.
Mm.
So I'll give a little bit of mitigation of that, but you really can't give Lions much mitigation for injuries when
Mm.
you look at the roster they've
Yeah,
got,
yeah,
and compared to what's going on the other end. I mean,
yeah,
you can't
yeah,
have to rule out the starting centre who's played like 100 minutes all season, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So
them's the breaks. Same as Sheffield having to play without Donovan Clay. That's
absolutely,
what happens.
or did they?
Well,
That's a different question, isn't it? And we'll get to that. Yeah, so I was watching the game. You're just expecting strength and numbers to take over.
mm,
I thought Newcastle's game plan was pretty solid. They
mm,
didn't let Briscoe loose. They helped off the right guys, and normally it's kind of. And then London had this kind of embarrassment of riches with Hadzibegovic, Dallaire, and Soko. And I don't think the coach had them all. We'll talk about in a second, but I don't think he had. Dallaire sat down a lot of this game, and a couple of times on the bench, he wasn't very happy that he was sitting down. I think
mm,
he didn't play the
mm,
whole third quarter, or something like that. And so, sometimes you've got to try and keep everybody happy
mm.
to get the best out of them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure, and that's a problem with having 9 or 10 guys. Sandy hasn't played in the two games. Adebayo played like 10 minutes. So it's playoffs, so you play your guys. I get that, but
Mm,
even then, they've still got a lot of them or a lot of talented players. I thought the game turned actually halfway through the second quarter. I thought Newcastle were kind of teetering a little bit. They were up, I think, London maybe up at 3 or 5 or something like that.
mm,
And Michael Coro made 3 consecutive baskets, basically 1, 2, 3, layup, jump shot, layup, whatever, getting to the rim because he'd made a couple of threes early, then he missed a couple, and then he got to the rim and made a couple. And I thought those baskets were kind of him saying, "Look, we ain't going anywhere."
mm.
That was it. That were they were. There are some baskets. There are times that the game is being played, and it's not. And I thought that the middle of the second quarter as the game was being played because the only chance Newcastle had to get anywhere near London was to get into their heads,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and to get basically to get them into a dogfight. And to get them into a dogfight, Newcastle had to score enough, which
Mm,
is easy against the size and length and defense of London. I mean, Peterson is an exceptional defensive player. Rye is very, very solid. The length of Dallaire and Hadzibegovic and all those guys, And you got a guy like Adebayo coming off the bench. So Newcastle had to stay with them and score. And I thought Okoro led them in the first half like he has in basically every big game this season.
mm,
And making those shots and keeping it close, at the third quarter, going into the third quarter, that just kind of chipped away at London's psyche.
mm,
And this might be a bit, I'm trying not to avoid recency bias and who won, etc. But that was the impression I got at the time. That,
mm.
and I was sitting next to a guy who knows a little bit more about it than me, um,
Yeah,
who was saying basically the same thing, who told me halfway through the second quarter that Newcastle were going to win this game. And I looked at him like he was mad.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, they have it. You can see in the look,
Mm,
and body language, big on body language. So yeah, and then it got a bit weird. I thought in the third quarter because as I said, I don't think Dallaire played in the third quarter. London were toggling lineups around, but they couldn't make a shot.
mm,
And to be fair, Newcastle weren't. The only guy who could make a shot was Stuckman, and Stuckman is the only guy who you'd probably say outside of Briscoe is a knockdown shooter. So credit to Newcastle for not letting the right guy shoot. And London really didn't play with enough pace, I thought.
mm.
I don't know what you thought.
I just thought they got. It was like they got in their own heads almost. It was one of
Hmm.
those things where it just.
It's
Again,
happening. This
maybe
is
I'm overreading things like
yeah,
you because my focus on it was when I already knew what the final score was. Um,
yeah,
but they just looked not right, and I don't know whether it's because the other thing is obviously the pressure of the situation. They're expected to get to the final. They're expected to win. That was the whole focus of everything was through that. And you've got this team at the other end who's just rocked up out of the A&E department, and you should roll them
and I've seen
basically.
that look.
And as you say, they weren't rolling them.
And you look, and it gets worse because when you see the guys warming up, you look at them, and you think that's all they got.
Mm,
You
yeah,
see
yeah.
that that's all they got. Okay, it's so tough. You got to
Mm,
put it down. The one game, the biggest game. I was talking about the third game thing. When we won everything in 2012, 2011, 12. We blew out, I think, Surrey in the first leg, and we played against a good Cheshire team at home.
mm,
I think you commentated on that game.
mm,
A good Cheshire team at Sports Central, and we were down 27 at half time.
yeah.
This is a team with like Charles Smith, Joe Chapman.
Remember it? Yeah,
But,
yeah.
without 27, they had a guy called Bill Cole shooting threes, and
Mm,
a point guard whose name I forget, but I can still picture 6'4", an American point guard, and Matt Schneck and those guys. And we got it back to 10, and then had an absolute dogfight in the second leg and just got over the line. But
15, you won by second
won
leg.
by 15, but I think Chapman made three threes in like three
Mm,
minutes in the fourth quarter. And
mm.
it was the kind of that thing of we ain't losing. But it took us a while to realize we weren't losing because we were getting thrown out the building.
Yeah,
And it was off. Everything was
yeah.
off in that game.
Mm,
Because of lots of different things. You don't need to, these guys are not robots. You don't just turn up and just roll over people.
mm,
Particularly when you're playing in finals. So yeah, you got that impression. I thought you would say London probably out of rhythm. I think
mm,
probably indicated just how important Rye is to them.
mm.
Because we've seen in the past how well he's done it. And Newcastle just had guys who just kept making plays and battling.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you
So
know,
Pulliam and Knight pushed it out. Okoro got them back ahead in the third quarter. Pulliam and Knight pushed it out to 57-64 in the third quarter. Just wanted to pick up on that point because Lasker tweeted out in the fourth quarter that it all got a bit stagnant. And as I say, I had half an eye on it. I wasn't completely ignoring it. I had half an eye. And I said, but isn't Newcastle the best team in the league to get stagnant? Because they've got just individual scorers. So if the ball sticks, then you just hope it sticks in Pulliam's hands or Okoro's hands or James's hands or Knight's hands because all of them can create for themselves.
I don't like to give you compliments, but that's absolutely on point.
Mm,
Because Newcastle are an incredibly difficult team to speed up.
mm,
you know, um, and yeah, the downside of their offense is that I think Buzic said it before the game. Not many assists, but
mm.
talented scorers. There are more than one way to play a basketball
Yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what Newcastle have is more of kind of an NBA setup where basically teams hunt mismatches.
Mm,
That's kind of what they're doing. That's just a, a, a result of the roster that they've ended up with. You didn't start with that roster, but it's a
no.
roster that they ended up with. But you look at this game, right? London had 19 assists and 18 turnovers.
Mm,
Newcastle had 9 assists and 9 turnovers.
mm.
So the downside is you have to create your own shot more. The upside is
Yeah.
you don't turn the ball over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So everything in basketball is yin and yang. There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
right way of playing it. And yeah, it does at times, and it has this season at times, particularly when Newcastle have been short of juice in their legs. It's looked pretty ugly at times.
Mm,
But since Pulliam's only been there 3 months.
mm.
Pulliam didn't play in the
He wasn't
trophy.
very good for the first month either, or he
Was
didn't
okay.
fit. He
He was,
wasn't.
he
He
was, fit,
wasn't
he was
good. He
coming off the
didn't fit.
bench a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
was coming off the bench a bit. What was his
yeah,
role? That type of
yeah.
thing. The first game he played, I thought, yeah, he'll do. But
Mm,
then he was coming off the bench a bit, and then they had a lot of bodies. So Knight was playing the point, and they took him out. But he's only been there. He didn't play in the final
mm.
against Bristol. So that was what, the end of January.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's been there 3 months basically, and he's kind of cemented himself as being a high level
Mm.
SLB point guard.
Yeah, yeah.
To come up half court, different SLB point guard because he doesn't shoot many threes. He
Mm,
doesn't come off. He doesn't come off screens jacking it. He doesn't play at 100 miles an hour.
mm,
But he's one of those guys. If you haven't to guard him, you wouldn't quite know how. You can't grab hold of him. It's like the road runner. You
mm,
can't. He's so shifty that he goes where he wants to go,
mm.
and that you can't speed him up. And he seems to be tireless. He's playing 38, 39 minutes. So yeah, the Newcastle did get a little bit like that. But Newcastle's success was always going to depend upon their defense, and hope that some of the shot makers pulled a few shots out of the backside.
And then 240 to go. Briscoe's three made it 68-70. And to be honest with you, and by this time the other game had finished, so I was watching this
Yeah,
live in real time, and I thought this in real time that London played like they didn't understand the aggregate game, and Newcastle played like they did.
I think Newcastle play that way kind of anyway, so maybe they just kind of fell into that as
Mm.
everything else. London, yeah, as you say, London's rhythm was off there, a little bit manic. There was just a lot of stuff going on.
It's sort of rush decisions.
Yeah,
It's that thing of trying to win the game, and
yeah,
winning the game is not important in the first leg. Yes,
yeah,
you want to win the game, but if you're at 2 points and you lose by two, that's fine.
Yeah,
don't lose by 9, which was the potential before the M1 at the end,
yeah,
because you've rushed a 3 and you've cheated on defense trying to force something,
yeah.
and just play as if it's the end of the third quarter,
It's
not
hard
the
to do
end of
that
the
with
fourth
one.
quarter.
I get
Yeah.
that, Dan. You're 100% right. There's 4,000 people there
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
building. You
yeah,
expect
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
win. The crowd's up because it's looking at the scoreboard. It takes cool heads.
Mm.
It takes cool heads. It takes a bit of experience. I mean, to be absolutely fair, there'll be very few of the London guys that have any experience with two-legged
No,
basketball.
exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Very few.
And
I mean,
and and Bozic
and
hasn't
even
either.
and even Buzic. I mean, you might have had a little bit, I suppose, maybe in European games.
He
Europe.
in the quote he said last week, I think it was after the Surrey game. He said it's first time.
Well, I mean, that's incredibly difficult
Mm.
because
No,
as
now,
I said,
obviously, Euro Cup group games are essentially aggregate, but it's
yeah,
not
but
as
they're not.
finite.
Yeah, they are, but they're not. I know what you mean. They could end up being aggregate things,
Mm.
but no, I mean, a two-legged turnaround 2 days. That is a totally different kettle of fish, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as I say, one of the few things I can happily sit here and pronounce myself relatively expert on because we
Mm.
went through so much of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Youth and things I've talked about before. Things are so different. You do things so many different. You use your
Mm.
timeouts differently. You pick your units that you use are different. Particularly in the first leg. Where you're not trying to save things to win the game at the end. You're trying to win every possession on the way.
Mm.
You don't care. If somebody fouls out with 5 minutes to go in the first leg, so what?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
have to use another guy.
yeah.
We're not saving him because it's 40 minutes. So
You'd rather him foul out with 4 minutes to go than play
5 minutes less.
5 minutes less and have
Yeah.
four fouls.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And so the way that you move your pins on the chessboard, or move your pieces on the chessboard, utilize your resources is different. And it took a while,
Mm.
to understand that. You don't get that straight away.
No,
No,
I think that's part of the reason that Fab and Rob have been so successful in the format is because they've done it more than everybody
but I
else.
think that's right. I think that gave them certainly when we were going, it gave us an inbuilt advantage.
Mm.
Absolutely. Because the more you play, the more you do.
Mm.
And you've seen everything.
Mm.
At that point, you've seen everything. And you learn what the pinch points are, and you learn what the big points are. As I
Mm.
say, the big point in that game was a Coro in the second quarter,
Mm.
because that was the time that London could have potentially got on a roll, and if they got on a roll, got the crowd behind them, felt a bit better about themselves, make a few shots, and it can be a 15-point game.
Mm.
And Newcastle were going through a bit of a difficult period, and he came up and he made three layups. He had 25 in the game. You look
Mm.
back to what he was actually, he looked really
Mm.
healthy, I thought. Um, and just led his team to say, "No, well, we're here. We're not going anywhere." So even though Long couldn't make a shot, even though James couldn't make a shot, Knight came in and gave them some offense. That was enough just to keep it ticking over. And then you've got six guys who are playing undersized, so they have to battle for everything.
Mm.
They've all got. I mean, the thing about you have to remember also is that certainly, I think Newcastle, Leicester. I'm not sure about London. I would imagine Sheffield would have been as well. The O2 is a big thing.
Mm.
That's your line
Well,
for the.
that was the other thing. Watching the end of that game was Mike Okoro knew all about the O2.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he mentioned it three or four
Twice. Yeah,
times.
exactly. Yeah,
It
yeah,
was like this guy knows what this is about in a
yeah,
way that first year guys generally don't.
yeah. Exactly. And if that's the message that your coach is giving you, this is what I'm playing for, guys. fifteen
Mm.
thousand people.
Mm.
Now you think that's big. You think, oh, these guys are pro players.
Mm.
Okay, Christian James has been playing in Venezuela. Right, they
Mm.
ain't got 15,000 seater gyms there. Mike
Mm.
Okoro was in the Czech Republic in the French second division. They're not playing in front of 15,000 people there, right? Yeah, they played in some big college gyms, but not in championship games.
Mm.
None of these guys have ever played championship games. In fact, the most fascinating thing about American basketball players who come over here that we've heard of is that generally they've all won so little.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
It's almost impossible to win.
yeah.
You might win a conference title or something,
Mm.
but
Yeah, yeah,
or maybe if you're lucky, you win the conference playoffs and you get into the tournament, but you're not winning the tournament.
yeah, yeah.
So and even then, there's only there's 320
Mm.
college teams, and there's only 64 getting the tournament. There's only
Mm.
two getting the final.
Mm.
These guys, it is literally a job. So having something different,
Mm.
and Newcastle in particular haven't had a taste of it by playing in Birmingham.
Mm.
That is a big thing. I don't know if London. it's tough to read into psychology having had them lose the game, because as you say, it lends itself to confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But you were right; they weren't right, and Flannery was sitting next to me. He picked it up, far
Mm,
quicker than I did, and Newcastle just showed, that they are willful.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Willfulness gets you a long way.
Yeah, yeah. I did wonder about that and one at the end whether they might
Yeah,
rue that because
but
9-6, it's quite a
and you always do, don't you? But
yeah,
then
yeah,
again, it's one play, and it's one play in 100.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
know, and ultimately it's because Holloway was going quickly,
yeah.
and London hadn't gone quickly the whole game.
Mm,
And
mm,
suddenly they were forced to go quickly. And Long was a little bit tired, didn't get his body then, and they made it. And I mean, and Pulliam had a layup on the buzzer,
mm,
which was unfortunate, tough, but makeable. But if you tell Stuart that you're going to win by 6 in London
yeah.
with that,
Snap your
I
hand
think,
off.
to be honest, in relation to that game, and again, confirmation bias, haven't watched tonight's game. It was less about the amount they won by, but more about them sending a message, which is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we're not here to roll over,
Mm,
because everybody else, even me, were making jokes about it last week.
mm.
Everybody else kind of thought they were here to roll
Yep.
over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Definitely.
yeah, well done. Clap your hands. Good job.
Yep.
Pop, pop, pop. If we go back to America, guys, good
Yeah,
season. Well done. Thank you. But no,
yeah.
they're not there.
That was only the fourth time that a number five seed had beaten a number one seed. Everton in the tie you mentioned last week won both legs against Newcastle by the same scoreline as well. I forgot that. And then Chester beat Brighton in a Final Four game in 2000. I want to
It's
say
Tony G.
four or something. Yeah.
Tony G. He signed Trey Moore 3 months before the end of the season. Basically, didn't really try and win any games for the first next 3 months, and then basically absolutely submarined us in the playoffs. And Trey
Mm,
came to play. We weren't ready.
mm,
We won 23 games in a row to win the league, and we were. It was the first leg away from home, third playoff game. We went to London, went to Everton, and they beat us by 20.
mm.
And we
I think
had,
it was 95-79 in both
yeah,
legs.
something like that, beat us by 20. And then
Yeah.
the second leg, we came out and absolutely destroyed them for about 10 minutes. We bombarded them, but we couldn't make enough shots. And then a guy called Kevin Bell, who made a ton of shots,
Mm,
a point guard. And we burnt ourselves out when we were still down 16, and that was
mm.
it. But yeah, it's tough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, 5-1 don't play a load
Very
of
often, yeah.
times, but
Yeah.
it's not often that they lose.
Yeah.
And obviously they've lost twice now because
Yeah.
we're going to go on to the other one in a second. Peterson, 18 points, 9 of 12 shooting. Holloway, 12. Hadzibegovic, 11 points and 12 rebounds and 5 of 6 from the free throw line. Hadzibegovic.
Well,
I
that
felt like
sorted
that.
itself out tonight, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Regression to the mean. Coro 25, Knight 13, Neighbor 3 of 4 shooting for 11 points.
Yeah. I mean, I have to give him credit.
Yeah.
He played, he did his job,
Mm,
and it's not easy when you've not played much all season, to come out in that environment and play. He has his, as I say, he has his limitations, but he is a talented offensive player, always has been. And
mm.
he's, sometimes players buy into an identity because it's them, it's nobody else. They can't complain.
Yeah, yeah,
Coach, coach is playing you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So second leg today, Newcastle Eagles 77, London Lions 75, which means Newcastle wins 154, 150, 146 on aggregate. London with a 12-2 start immediately got ahead on the aggregate, and Okoro then got 2 fouls in the first quarter. It was almost the perfect start for the Lions, really.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's two things we talk about. Firstly, London, due to one assumes the copper box, they gave up the second leg at home.
Mm,
I think as travel sorts itself out around the league, I think it's probably more and more important to have the second leg at home.
mm,
In the past, we were never that bothered. We normally had to play our first legs Friday. We don't play Friday night, so it was normally a first leg. Um, but that had the advantage of not having to do 2 trips to Newcastle and back. But now, the Eagles, got a train down on Friday and got a train back on Saturday, stayed in the hotel, train back on Saturday, ready to play at home on Sunday. So, um, so I think, it benefited Newcastle that they played the second leg at home, particularly after it also probably benefited them that London were at home in the first leg because it might have meant that London kind of walked in without their eyes fully wide open.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Might
So
have
that
played
kind of,
into that whole thing
yeah,
we've talked
yeah,
about
kind of what
earlier.
we were talking about. So I think that does have a minor psychological impact there. Um, but the question is always going to be, what are the adjustments going to be? And London's adjustment was to basically attack inside early. They threw the ball inside a lot, got around the rim, and attacked Neighbour in particular, and a couple of the other guys as well, and played some pretty solid defense. And Newcastle's offense is actually better when they don't really have a true big, because pardon me, it they don't have anybody in the way in the middle.
Mm, mm,
They have lots of space for the individual guys to go to work and score. And so Newcastle's defense was a little bit clunky to start with. The offense, sorry, was a little bit clunky to start with. I watched the first half of this game in the second row from the stand. I will say this one thing about second legs: the environment was fantastic.
yeah.
Um, Absolutely, what really pissed me off. Really pissed me off is that Chris Grant, John Amici, all the loud mouths who want to take things away from what we have weren't there.
Mm,
There's no way in the world you could be at that, and I'm sure you're going to tell me the same about Leicester in a
yeah, it's
minute.
exactly the
There's
same.
no way in
Yeah.
the world you could be in that environment today,
Mm,
and not be utterly exhilarated by the
yeah,
sport,
yeah,
live
yeah,
sport you were watching.
yeah.
There's none. It had everything. It had emotion. It had skill. It had talent. It had commitment. It was everything. And when people start to talk down our league and talk
Mm,
down all this stuff, they don't come to games,
mm,
and it really pisses me off that they don't. That they want to be in there, whether it's ivory towers or whether it's their brick outhouses. I don't really
mm,
care.
mm,
But you don't talk about stuff you don't know about. That's a
mm,
basic rule for me. I wouldn't, if you don't know about, you say you don't know about, and you don't offer a worthless opinion. And what you certainly don't do is try to submarine the sport.
mm,
Anyway, that's done. Um, Beyond that, yeah, London started aggressively inside. Newcastle then basically, London ran a normal rotation when they had their guys out towards the end of the first quarter, and Christian James came in and made up for the shots that he missed on
mm,
um,
mm.
on Friday night.
And
And
Newcastle had a 13-0 run around the first quarter break to lead 30 to 18. And in that time, Soko, with his third foul 1 minute into the second quarter and his fourth foul 3 minutes into the second quarter.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things about that. Firstly, um, that run Newcastle went. Adebayo came in the game. Adebayo's not a shooter. Newcastle went to a zone. Adebayo was -10 in 2 minutes.
Mm,
He only played 2 minutes. I'm not saying that's on necessarily on Adebayo, but that's an adjustment that a coach makes. To do that, and that's when London have got kind of two or three of their bench guys in. And Christian James came out, and I think he got fouled on a three, then he made a three, then he made another three. And at this point, particularly beginning of the second quarter, Pulliam was just pulling every string.
mm,
You watch. I remember thinking, Jesus, this guy's high level, because he was finding the seams, he was kicking out for threes, and then I think he made a behind the back pass in transition,
yeah, yeah.
which had the whole arena just like, even they were smiling about it. The whole arena was up, and I mean, the biggest thing about this game was there was no music played over the loudspeakers,
Mm,
nothing. From the first moment of the game, the crowd, both crowds, to be fair, because there was about 20 or 30 London fans who came up, so absolute credit to them.
mm,
A couple of them enjoying the ice cream on Tynemouth Beach this morning, I think.
yeah.
Credit to all those guys, to Pat and all the other guys. They were just there for basketball.
Mm,
There was nothing else, and they were in it from the first possession, defense, off it, whatever, and they knew, and to a certain degree, it was a relatively well-informed crowd. They, they
mm.
they cheered at the right stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
booed at the right
Yeah,
stuff.
you could see it on the telly.
You see it, and there's nothing which gladdens my heart more than seeing a little 8-year-old waving someone goodbye when they've got. Absolutely, it takes me back.
Yeah,
Back
yeah,
to Crow Tree Leisure Centre.
yeah, yeah.
To Granby Halls, it will be for you.
Alan
To all
Cunningham. It was Alan
Oh,
Cunningham playing for Glasgow Rangers. I think it was a double overtime game. It's the only game they lost outside of Scotland. I almost hyperventilated waving him off. Fouled
yeah,
out.
I think there you go. I think mine might have been Colin Irish
Yeah,
against the
standard.
Leicester Centre, but I think I was after that was after I called him fatty and he stared me down. It was very close to the bleacher, whatever. But yeah, I was Jason Fogarty. Sorry, Jason Fogarty for
Mm,
Manchester against
mm,
Sunderland. The Coventry. These beat the crap out of each other. Play 60 games over.
mm,
But seeing that gladdens my heart because
mm,
it's people who are there. And actually, there was a sense of, I mean, I would be the same with Dan, but there was a sense of occasion to this game.
mm,
You know, it wasn't just a Friday night kind of everybody show up and get your foam hands and rubber
mm.
ducks and all that stuff. There was a sense of occasion because everybody there knew what it was about.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, and we lose that sometimes. And this is why the one thing the SLB needs to do this summer um, is fix the issues within the product that they can fix.
Mm,
Fix the sport, not worry about everything else. Fix what's going on around the arenas. Fix what's going on in relation to schedule. Fix
mm,
all of that stuff. Give it some thought. Think about the import rules, all of that stuff. But do it to protect the product because the product is what matters. And today, in two arenas in 200 miles apart, we had a great product.
mm.
So, yeah, so Pulliam's pulling all the strings, and London, I'm afraid, can't throw it in the ocean. And
Yeah,
again,
they didn't make a three until 3 minutes from halftime.
yeah, that was Brisker. Brisker never
Yeah,
got that was Brisker in transition.
yeah, it was.
Transition,
Yeah.
and that was after James shot a bad one in the corner in front of me. Brisker made one in transition. Stuart calls a timeout straight away. So the right from Newcastle's perspective, the right guys were shooting it. From the thing about Soko is really interesting because I mean I remember thinking when Bozic. I mean I'm a fan of keeping people in with two fouls, particularly if you've got a minutes plan.
Mm,
When he committed his third foul, I was thinking about Bozic. I'm thinking, how invested are you? You're basically he struck me as just being the gambler who's just rolling all his cards out. He's rolling the roulette, on roulette wheel. I'm
mm,
going to
mm,
put the house on, not even on red or black. I'm going to put it on, 0 to 12.
mm,
And then see what happens. So I need so he got three fouls in
mm,
9 minutes. He only played like 4 minutes, and at that point, you keep him in. And he got a fourth one on a trying to take a charge, which wasn't very wise either on Ward
mm,
Hibbert. As Ward Hibbert came down the lane and he didn't quite kind of caught one of those ones where you catch him on the shoulder. I haven't seen any of this game back, so I don't know.
mm,
I'm not going to talk about the ref and that much because
mm,
I haven't watched the game back, so I couldn't. Newcastle shot a lot of foul shots. London shot quite a few, but couldn't make any.
mm,
So keeping him in for four, that was really, I thought, quite bizarre. And then London's guards really, I know they play a certain way, but that way is really dependent on Rye making plays off the dribble. When Rye wasn't able to make plays off the dribble or make corner threes, you didn't see much aggression from Peterson or Holloway. They couldn't get Brisker open because Newcastle did a great job on him. I mean, Pulliam was all over him, despite the fact he's playing 40 minutes. Pulliam and Ricard were all over him. And as such, um, the only way that London were really going to win the game was to win the boards, and
mm,
Newcastle played willfully
mm,
with multiple. Begovic didn't play that much in the first half because Soko got those minutes, um, and at one point, quite a lot actually. James, who they brought in as a two guard in December, he's guarding Soko and Begovic.
mm.
It's just total kind of almost positionless basketball.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the advantage of positionless basketball is that you can switch on everything.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you
yeah.
can switch every screen. So Pulliam can switch. Pulliam's 6'3" and he can fight in front. Ward Hibbert might be guarding the ball. He can fight. He can switch and then deny the inbound, the pass into the big guy. All of that, all Okoro Long, they're all comfortable enough guarding the perimeter and guarding the big guy. So that creates a different problem as well, which means that if you're switching everything, the opposition are going to have to either take advantage of those mismatches, and London's guards really were not capable of doing that. Peterson and Holloway really didn't score the ball on the mismatches at all, which meant that you got to kind of get your mismatches inside on the rebounding. But Long and James did an incredible job of kind of blocking shots from behind and getting hands in and just willful plays, to take
Mm.
away kind of the obvious advantage that London had.
So you're not going to pick up on the referees, but I've got
Are
three
you?
in
I mean,
a. I've got three in a row. I'm about to pick up. Look, Newcastle's still comfortable at halftime, by the way.
oh, hang on,
Uh,
sorry. Just breaking news.
yeah,
I've literally just read. I've been sent an email.
yeah,
Um, Peter Bozic is
I've
set to go
seen it. Yeah,
to Japan.
yeah.
Now, I did not know
It's a
that.
rumor on. Well, it's a well informed. I think it's from
Yeah.
a well informed source. Put it
Right.
that way
Okay.
on social
Well, I
media.
did not know that when I just said I wasn't sure
Yeah,
about him being
yeah,
checked out. So I'm not trying to be clever after the fact or
yeah,
like one of those football TV commentators who sees a substitute warming up and says, I think
yeah,
he's
yeah,
going on. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I'm not doing that. I did not have a clue about
yeah.
that. But that actually doesn't overly surprise me. I mean, obviously he's on 777 money, wasn't he, on a contract? But given what I saw tonight, it was really kind of all the dice on the table, and we'll see where they land. Sorry, turn me on the refs because, as I say,
So
just on that, Dan.
yeah,
Before we get to that, I watched the first half from down in the second row, and
yeah,
I was emotionally invested.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, and I mean, they missed a call on the first play of the game, and Waterway got pushed right in front of me on a layup, and there was a couple of them they missed possibly on
So he
sports.
is going to have a little go at the
Yeah, and they
referee.
missed a possibly on sports night on Eagles and transition, and then Mark Stewart went off when Will Neighbour got called for a block, which I don't know if it was a block or a charge. You tell me. It was at the far end away from me, and Mark got a technical. And then the second quarter, Peter Bozic went off when they missed a goaltend at the
Mm,
far end when somebody slapped the backboard, and he
mm,
got technical. So
mm.
that kind of evened things out. But you tell us
Yeah.
which
So I wasn't going to go on any of those, but I don't
right.
know if because I'd spent the afternoon watching Leicester Sheffield. But Tanner Stuckman, with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, absolutely smashed the ball off the stanchion on
Oh yeah,
possession.
absolutely, yeah. And I tell you, to be fair, there was three Newcastle players, and Mark Stewart going,
Yeah,
"What?" And the rest
yeah,
were kind of, "He has seen
yeah,
no evil, yeah, no evil,
yeah,
didn't see
yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah,
whatever."
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there was the melee with 151 to go, where Peterson ended up with a cut eye, and Pulliam was given an unsportsmanlike foul, seemingly for causing it. It was really hard to tell because there were obviously three bodies in there. It did look like he might have just.
Well,
I don't know if you had a better view.
I was at the top next to Flannery at this point, and he saw it, and he said, "Yeah, Pulliam pushed him."
Okay.
Afterwards, so he said he called the call before the
Mm.
refs called it.
Oh, okay.
What I will say is they missed a foul on Pulliam first because we were right in front of it, and Peterson
Mm.
reached in and did that. So Pulliam's knocked over, and then there's a bit of pushy shovey. Pulliam's got to be a bit smarter than that at
Mm.
times. He's got a little bit of a fuse, which is which is good because you like the willfulness. But when he's on three fouls and then he gets his fourth foul soon afterwards, he takes
Yeah,
himself up.
he got his fourth foul 30 seconds later.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
Toko fouling out with a minute to go in the third quarter. I thought that was a little harsh on a heave
What
at
was
the end
that?
of the shot
What was
clock.
that called?
It
Remind
was
me.
somebody in the
No,
corner
no,
was
it was Knight. It was a Knight got
Knight. That's
the
it. Yeah.
rebound. So good. It may have been harsh, but Knight did the NBA sweep through
Mm,
on the ground, and Soko had his hands down there, and there was 1 second on the shot clock.
yeah.
Got to keep his hands out of that.
Yeah.
Whether it's a foul or not, he can't make that mistake. I remember thinking, it's a dumb fifth foul. You
Yeah.
gave the refs a chance to call it. What I will say in the third quarter was that London had the most success they had offensive the whole game. Hadžibegovic didn't play. Hadžibegovic is kind of a lob threat normally, and Newcastle were defending that lob because they were switching with bigger guys, so there was no lob threat on the roll
Mm,
because they were switching everything. So what Bozic did was he put Soko down low, and they played through Soko, and Soko's a unit, and basically too much of a unit for Long.
mm,
So and because James had started the third quarter, when Soko came in, James was out, so Long had to guard him. All right. And what that then let them do was play inside out. And Soko made a couple of plays, a couple of rebounds, also threw a couple out to Stuckman for threes. So he was a big part of, their kind of counter to what Newcastle were doing.
mm.
Um, so to that extent, the foul hurt them. But I don't have that. Whether it's if that had been the second foul, you probably wouldn't have complained, Dan. You know,
I probably wouldn't have looked at it that
I
closely,
probably
to be
looked at that
fair.
closely,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
he put his hands down there, and Knight's got this thing where he drew foul. It was just a bad play by Soko, and if he's been harshly done to, um, then he shouldn't have put himself in the position to have that done, and he shouldn't have committed the silly third foul, which is offensive foul in the paint in the first
mm,
half either. But yeah, I mean they do have an impact on the game because Soko's gone and Pulliam's
mm.
gone.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
and Okoro at this point, Okoro is kind of looking like a guy who's played 2 games and isn't quite right again because
Mm.
Okoro subbed out twice in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
way in the world he's subbing out of that game if and playing 27 minutes. If he's right, he didn't touch the ball much in the fourth quarter, and that hurt Newcastle a bit, I thought.
They were up 10 going into the fourth, but London with a 10-2 start, and then Holloway with a 3 with 4 minutes to play. It was tied on the night 66-66.
Yeah, it was that kind of point where Newcastle's offense becomes a bit stagnant, as you
Mm.
say, and pull him at. I mean, Bozic in the third quarter, he interestingly, he was obviously desperate to try and speed the pace of the game up because
Mm.
Newcastle were up by 18-20, and Pulliam's very difficult. So they started doubling Pulliam a little bit. When he sent Soko in, Soko was in there to double the ball, and at times that kind of worked a little bit because it took the ball out of Pulliam's hands, and Newcastle had to rotate the ball, but they also gave up some layups as a result as well.
Mm.
Um, what they were able to do though was to, I mean, what they were always going to do was to wear Newcastle down.
Mm.
I mean, you can't not be worn down if you're playing with basically that second half they played 6 guys, and you'd argue that there's a strong argument that none of them is a 4 or a 5.
Mm.
I mean, Long plays a 3 in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
His guard is Zach Jackson this year. And then you've got the rest of them are guard, the rest of them are guards, and Joshua Hibbert basically who's a
Mm.
3. So it is going to wear you down, but I thought London weren't quite together enough to get it done, and I thought Newcastle were it took me back, to be honest. Watching James guard, guys who are 6'10" and with rebounds, took me back to he's basically Joe Chapman. He's a 6'4" shooting guard, and took me back to watching to when we used to play. And we had little guys who were guarding the bigs and just rebounding everything and just getting all over them and just not allowing yourself to lose. You don't need, size isn't everything,
Mm.
depth isn't everything. More than over 1 game, over two
Over
games,
one game, yeah.
over
Over
one
five
game,
games.
over
But
50 games. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but over 1 or 2 games, willfulness
Yeah,
beat
yeah.
both.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just thought Newcastle made every willful play in this game.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly run through a few of the plays near the end. So Hadzibegovic tipped it in to give London the lead on the night, 68 70. And then he blocked Pulliam at
Yeah.
the other end. But Holloway with a sort of fall away miss. And Pulliam, really clever, went quick, caught London off guard, found Ward Hibbert underneath to lay it up 70-70.
Something I really, really wish Pulliam would do more. I know
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
about
yeah,
controlling the tempo, but at times he gives up advantage to control the tempo.
yeah. Mm,
Sometimes, he doesn't need a screen. Just you've got a
mm,
guy in front of him, just attack him.
yeah,
We've
yeah.
seen that happen in SLB all the time and BBL all the time.
Mm.
Something I wish he'd do a little bit more often, to be honest.
A timeout, and then Bariska was trying to force a pass to Hadzibegovic, turned it over. Cora missed a 3, but then Bariska trying to force a foul out of a 3-point shot, and that was the point at which I figured it was done.
Yeah, that was right. I mean, firstly, Ward Hibbert made a hell of a play on the lob to Hadzibegovic,
Mm,
because, as I said, to manage being able to switch everything. He fronting the post again, took me back years, 'cause he used to do it all the time. So he's fronting the post, and Hadzibegovic is a lob threat, but, if there's nowhere to throw it, if there's people in front of him and behind him, very difficult to finish.
mm,
So Waterbury got a steal on that. There was a couple of times in the last 5 minutes, James got massive rebounds under the rim,
mm,
and then, as you say, Briscoe tried to jump into somebody for a 3 as well.
mm,
And they didn't really do it. I mean, Briscoe got 1-3 in transition. He got 1-3 on an out of bounds play, where he comes out to the corner and shoots it. And he's a great shooter, but they really didn't manage to free him up at all
mm,
over the course of the game. And then you look at Ryan. Ryan played 36 minutes. He had 5 points or something like
mm,
that.
mm,
Then you look at the foul line. You look at the foul line. They're 11 of 25 from the foul.
mm,
They just against confirmation bias, but they just found themselves in a dogfight they weren't expecting. Probably, again, you always like to think that you have a sixth man, but I think maybe the environment might have made a difference to this.
mm, mm,
It really was. There was no dead time in this game, not even like an NBA game. It was loud every step of the way. There's a real understanding of what was at stake. And as I said, Hadzibegovic over 4, Soko over 4, 0 of 8 from the foul line.
mm,
For those guys, Briscoe missed a couple.
Yeah,
11 of
yeah,
25. Now, Newcastle didn't shoot it very well, and you're going to get yips. Newcastle shot 40 foul shots, I think. You're going to
yeah.
get yips in the
29 of 40.
29 of 40, so that's not bad. That's just under 75%. You're going to get some yips in the game. I get that because it's a big game
I
and a nerve.
suppose it's 11 misses to 14 misses, so it's not a
It,
million
yeah,
miles. It's
it isn't, but it means that
obviously a lot more attempts.
a lot more attempts to get into the line. I mean, to be fair, I've never seen. Somebody said that. So it was after, I think Cole Long knocked down a couple of foul shots with 3 minutes ago. He said that. Somebody said, "I've never seen a player look as tired as that and make two foul shots."
Yeah, yeah,
Cole Long played 39 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? It's just nuts, really. I mean, to be able to compete for that long, and it just, it really, sport reveals character, and some of
yeah.
the Newcastle guys were dogs.
Mm,
And as I say, London got themselves into a dogfight, and they just weren't quite together enough or aware enough as to how they were going to win to get out of it.
mm,
So, Peterson didn't really start to attack until Pulliam was on 4 fouls in the fourth quarter. Um, Delaire, his body language over the game, wasn't great. He hadn't played much, he only played 19 minutes on Friday night. Hadzi Begovic set out the whole third
yeah,
quarter.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the Adebayo 2 minutes, Andy doesn't play. Just the whole thing was it was like, okay, we're in a motor race here, and we might not have the fastest car. You know what I mean? It's like, we might be the roadkill here.
Mm,
What are we going to do? And that's when your togetherness come in. And again, the guy stood next to us. He said it was a bit like and we're going back a while here, Andre Smith and the Everton Tigers.
yeah, 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 yeah,
That season,
yeah,
whereby the Everton Tigers had a lot of 2008, 2009. I think Everton Tigers had a ton of money.
yeah.
Smith, who went on to play in
Israel.
Israel, high
Mm,
level,
mm,
6'9", big guy, had a couple of other Americans on serious money with serious pedigrees, and basically every solid English player going.
mm,
And but they weren't together, and Trey Moore and Reggie Jackson Eagles beat them.
mm,
So, it was kind of that willfulness and that
mm,
togetherness, eventually wins out. And you have to say, at the end of the day, if your coach is on his way to Japan and knows he's on his way to Japan,
mm,
I mean, at one point, there's somebody else stood in the back at one point, 3 minutes to go in the game, sorry, a bit earlier than that, because Newcastle were up about 12, so 18 in aggregate. The Buzzards called a timeout, and you look at them, and there's 6 coaches on the floor, and,
mm,
12 players on the bench,
mm,
and it's like, it doesn't matter how many you've got.
mm,
Sometimes it's weakness in numbers, not strength in numbers.
mm,
So the strategies of the game were really exciting, but I thought interesting. But Newcastle, London were chasing it, and they were at times fractured in their mindset. You could see Rye was not Rye. That was not the Aaron Rye I've seen for 2 years. Maybe whether his physical ailment was impacting his mental connection, I don't know. That was not him. And I think without him to kind of build around, to get those cheap points, to make those plays, to get that stuff in transition, the ones I mean.
mm,
Without him, they didn't really have a focal point.
mm.
Soko tried to be it, but he fouled out too quick.
Yeah, yeah.
He only played 12 minutes and fouled out. And overall, I mean, you didn't see it on the camera, because I just watched the end of the game back a little bit. I mean, the players went ballistic when
Mm,
Knight laid the ball up to go up 11 in the last minute. And when they won the game, you saw a clip of Mark and kind of raising his hands to the crowd, all that. He was doing the full St James's Park, Eddie Howe. He was doing the full lap
yeah,
of with the
yeah,
crowd. This was clenched, everything like
yeah.
that.
It was
A little bit,
similar in Leicester. It was
yeah,
similar.
exactly. No, we saw it on the TV at Leicester with
Yeah,
Rob.
yeah, yeah,
I saw it with Rob. I saw him,
yeah,
all that stuff.
yeah,
I'd probably say on what I saw on the TV, Mark was probably about 50% more.
yeah,
Because his first one, obviously, Rob's done plenty.
yeah,
Um, and the place stayed there for it was about 5 minutes
mm,
before the place quietened down.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what pisses me off about these people who don't watch the sport
yeah.
and don't watch the product and talk about it to its detriment.
Mm,
Good sport depends on lots of things. It depends on talent. It depends on commitment. It depends on circumstance. It depends on expectation, because expectation certainly, but also situation.
yeah,
Situation that was a game, a
yeah,
situation,
yeah, yeah.
game which had an impact. It had a game, to get a
It
meaning.
goes back to my whole rant of a few weeks back. Is it's about the people. It's about the
Yeah,
people in the stands who've paid their money. It's about the 60, 100, however many Sheffield fans who came down and sang all the way throughout. And I saw on social media they were singing outside their minibus on the way home as well, still going, even though their team had been beaten, and the reaction from that in turn turns up the volume from the Leicester fans. It's about that. The whole thing. You could play that game behind closed doors. It wouldn't have the same emotion because it's about the how people feed off the crowd and everything. It's all about that. That is the connection. That is what is wonderful about sport, and we kind of forget that because we think there's something over here that will get us more money or better things or do whatever. And actually those people, and as you say, it's actually only really made by people who truly understand what it is that they're watching, so
Yeah,
that they know. The Newcastle fans know, the Leicester fans knew when in the fourth quarter, when the score went 9 points, 11 points, 9 points, 11 points, 9 points, 11 points,
yeah,
everybody in the building knew that was 1 point lead, 1 point deficit, 1 point lead, 1 point deficit. They
yeah,
understood what it was they were there for, and particularly for Leicester and Newcastle fans who've been there before, and London and even Sheffield it's been 10 years, but they've been there before as well. Uh, know what that prize is. They know what the O2 is all about. They know what that day is about.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, yeah, and we actually benefit from the intimacy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sport benefits from the intimacy.
yeah.
Game isn't the same if it's played in the tent.
I still think you could do with a couple of feet back from the benches in Newcastle.
Oh yeah, we could do it in a thousand seats.
No, no,
No,
a couple of rows less. I think
that's
behind
what
the
we do.
benches
That's
in
what we do for the European
Newcastle.
game. But
It's
even then, yeah, maybe. But then you still,
yeah,
it's more for
but
me, the more
yeah,
intimate. If people
yeah,
can
yeah,
sit on the court in NBA games,
yeah,
more
yeah,
intimate, the better. I mean, we need to knock the ball down at the back of which the camera looks at and put another 10 rows of seats in there. And
yeah, yeah,
but even so, the intimacy of it is a selling point.
yeah. Definitely, definitely,
You,
definitely.
we are literally, I mean, I remember watching those Latvian fans seeing Porzingis up in the flesh
Yeah, yeah.
that's last year. That's like he's a god in Latvia,
Mm, mm,
and they're sitting 2 rows from him, and they were like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's a selling point. And instead, we get, oh, we don't, no, we don't play in big venues, we don't do this, we don't do that. We can run a proper league on, on 2,500 seater venues, 2,000 seater venues with great atmospheres.
mm,
It provided it is coordinated right and it's set up right and the detail is right.
yeah, yeah,
We're not playing. Newcastle aren't playing 4 games in 8 days at home to finish the season.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
can't sell 4 games in 8 days at home. Eventually, particularly when you have all the European games and all that. So it needs some thought and it needs some structured views. But it was an incredible environment. It was an
Yeah.
incredible atmosphere, and I had to get away from it in the second half and watch at the top because I just, I was just too invested.
Yeah, yeah,
Just tough, really.
yeah,
I was too into it. The other thing, of course, is that at the end of the day, London have been the behemoth for the past
yeah,
4 years.
yeah, yeah. That plays into it as well.
That plays into it as well.
This
You can't,
this is this is beating Kingston.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean,
that
and we
sort of
know, and
thing,
you
isn't it?
know, and I know that London aren't what they were last year or the year before,
No,
but in the
no.
league, they still
But
got
but in the
substantially
same
paid
way
to
that
do it.
when Kingston became Guildford, it still said outside the Granby Halls Kingston Kings because there was brand awareness, so people knew. So
You,
even
you,
though it wasn't quite the same thing, that was the team, and it's still the same. When Leicester play Newcastle, more people turn up than when they play Surrey. I don't want to pick on
when,
Surrey, but because they know that over the years that these have been the games.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So
So
London kind of picked that up, and there's
yeah,
also kind of the little bit of kind of old chauvinistic. We don't like Southerners.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
beat
yeah.
the big
That
beat the
London,
city
we beat
smoke.
that.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
London,
beat that London.
beat that London. But
So
no,
so
all
let's
of that figured in to just an incredible day,
we
and credit to everybody now.
we've still got another
Game to do, yeah.
85 minutes to do here.
So,
So James 21, 11 of 13 free throws, seven rebounds. Pulliam 14 points, 12 assists. Josh Ward-Hibbert 13 points. We mentioned the free throw numbers already. Delay 15 points, 9 rebounds. Holloway 11. Brisker and Hadzabegovic 10, 14 missed free throws. The other thing I thought at the end of this is it maybe advocates for celebrating winning the league a little more, because then if you don't make any of the finals, you've at least
yeah,
celebrated
you haven't
winning
had
the
your fun, have
hardest thing
you?
with your hands. But
You haven't had your fun, have you?
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, and I didn't get. I couldn't get away with that.
Yeah.
I couldn't get away with that I thought it was. I get that their target was the O2, and I get all of that stuff, but
Mm.
and I get, to some
But
people, league is a regular season, but it's not to us, and it's not to
mm,
those that have been around for a while.
mm.
You know, it's
And again, going back, most of your punters will think it's a really, really good achievement. So why not celebrate it with them?
absolutely, yeah.
Let's move on. Sheffield Sharks 85, Leicester Riders 75 in the first leg. Clay, we've sort of touched on already, had an ankle injury, was suited but did not play. Otrobia in the starters. Leicester going 1 for 8 in the first quarter from 3 point range. Abercrombie missed all 5 field goal attempts he took.
Yeah.
And as soon as Ricky McGill hit those first two threes, you know he's going to have a good night. Leicester just about hung on in the first quarter.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for ultimately, whatever we talk about, the biggest thing about this game is that Clay wasn't playing,
Mm,
and Clay not playing probably hurt Leicester more than it hurt Sheffield because Leicester would not have been expecting that.
mm,
So, I always remember again. I'm sorry, I'm reminiscing a lot on this, but it's easy to it's good to sometimes draw comparisons. Um, 15-16 when Leicester were just about to beat us to win the league. We beat them in the cup final, and then they played us in the trophy final in Glasgow, and they beat us. And part of the reason they beat us was because Neil Watson didn't play. I played 2 minutes.
yeah, yeah. Connor played
Connor played
38,
the
I
whole
think.
38 minutes because Neil Watson wasn't very well.
Mm,
And of course, we've been preparing for Neil Watson,
mm,
or the point guard they had there. We've been preparing all week for that. So when he's not there, it's like it throws you off a little bit because it's a slightly different way. It gives them a slightly different defensive sign up. I remember we had to change our mat. We changed our matchups. Probably shouldn't have because Chapman was meant to be guarding Bernardini, and we ended up um, moving him to Connor because we were quite respect and had Fletch guard Bernardini, and because we didn't want there was a reason for it, but I think it was all about we didn't want Fletch and we wanted to cross match Fletch and Connor. Didn't want Connor to get into Fletcher's head, basically,
mm,
with his defense and that type of stuff. So there was a lot of stuff to do it, and it threw us off more than it threw them off. And it happened because Neil Watson, who was a really good offensive player, but he wasn't a great defensive player. We thought we could attack him.
mm,
We liked those matchups, but when Connor came in, we didn't like the matchups in Wales. So what you've got with Sheffield, and it's a long way around to say what you've got with Sheffield in this game is that Clay's not playing. Now, if Clay's not playing, then if you're Leicester, what your immediate adjustment is to say, well, we're not going to let McGill or Nixon beat us.
mm,
We're going to make them throw it to Otarobia. But that's not what they prepared for.
mm,
So what happened was from my perspective, they prepared for they played Otarobia as if he was Clay.
mm,
And that meant that McGill probably didn't have as much attention as he needed. And we know with McGill, once he gets going, he makes a couple of threes, he's comfortable, he's great. But the ones that hurt Sheffield Leicester weren't the threes he made. It was the ones where he gets a couple of dribbles and he's at the rim, or he gets a couple of dribbles, he turns the corner, he's got that little 10-foot floater off the
mm.
backboard, that type of those shots,
Yeah, yeah.
which
My take was that first shot he made. I was like, wow, they're in trouble now.
yeah, a little bit.
To me he's that guy that you can almost tell at the beginning of the game.
Oh yeah, that's true. But what I'm saying is that
It wasn't the fact it was a three. It was the fact that he was taking it. He was comfortable. He
yeah.
was ready. He was there.
No, I agree with 100% with that. What I would say is that I don't think Leicester adjusted to that quickly enough
Mm.
why did McGill shoot those shots down?
Because he could.
Because Clay's not playing.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
He's
okay. Yeah, I see what you
he's
mean. Yeah,
looking around. He's thinking, I'm not
yeah,
running the same stuff I'm running
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
with Clay that I'm running with Archerobia.
yeah, yeah.
So he immediately goes into attack mode. He's thinking,
Mm,
this is for me now because because we've done all of that stuff. And so I thought, and the difference with the way that Leicester defended it today, once they've had
mm,
a day to see the film, there's times in this game whereby even Thompson wasn't coming back to the rim,
mm,
to defend again, to challenge McGill's shots. And yeah, and he's incredibly uh, what's the best word? It's tough to find a word for Ricky McGill. I watched him for a
mm,
year. Um, He's a magnetic player to watch because you just don't know what's going to happen. But you got
Mm,
to take the rough and the smooth.
mm,
Seen that in an example over the weekend. But in this game, yeah, he was electric. Now Sheffield also kind of struggling without Nixon, clearly not very healthy. And to be honest, I think the reason Leicester, I think the reason Sheffield won this game is because they were a team that Leicester hadn't prepared for.
mm,
And they got minutes out of Glasgow and Reese, and even Jeffrey's got a few minutes, and Ocherobia scored the ball relatively well as well. And then McGill's kind of exuberance carried them over the rest of the way. Um,
So a 9-0 run by Sheffield in the second quarter, Leicester without a score for 5 minutes. It's 37-24. Into the second half, Nixon made six in a row to make it 54-34, 3 minutes into the third quarter. So a 20-point lead. At that point, Leicester were 1 for 15 from 3-point range and 1 for 7 from the free throw line.
well, the free throw line kills you. I mean, the 3-point shooting ain't great, but the reality is that you have to, if you defend Leicester the right way, and the key is you have to take away their catch and shoot threes, where they're a devastating catch and shoot three team. Then they're probably not, and because they create a lot of catch and shoot threes because of their offense, that kind of means their numbers go up.
Mm,
But if you can take them away and make them into individual shot makers, they're not as good. They're better off the catch and shoot. So I thought Sheffield did a fairly good job of that. But Leicester were never going to continue to shoot quite that poorly. And obviously the advantage is they've got Rob over there who's had 35, 38 two-legged games. So,
mm, mm,
so we'll no doubt remember 2011, 2012 when, or 13, 14 when Paul Gores came back and saved
mm.
us from being 23 points down instead of
Yeah,
11.
yeah,
Here
yeah,
we're
yeah.
11 points down last 5 minutes. You're down by 20 with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter in the first leg. So what?
Mm.
The only way it destroys you is if you crack.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you start chucking at bad shots and losing your discipline, or if the coach cracks and starts playing other guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It starts reaching into his bench to expect people who haven't done what they've done all season to do something different. Well, he's not. A coach ain't going to crack because he's been there so long before, and his team is, as I say, probably together with Newcastle, the most together and pretty willful. They're a
Mm,
pretty willful team as well. Having seen them up front, that Hunter's a willful player. Jackson's quietly willful, and obviously Thompson is a willful force of nature. But the
mm.
other guys, Abercrombie's been through some stuff this year. He missed a foul shot in Sheffield,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
to tie that game with 1.1 seconds to go, and he's shrugged it off and you'd never have known.
mm,
Right is every so often, right, he blocks somebody or he dunks on somebody. Albeit that Kendall Lewis, that dunk last week when he dunked on Kendall Lewis,
mm.
I didn't mention it. Kendall Lewis, the guy who's been swatting away every shot after the buzzer
Yeah, 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 yeah,
all season. Every
yeah,
time someone shoots a shot after a foul, Kendall Lewis
yeah,
is with Ethan Wright comes down the lane, he just stands there and let's watch them dunk it. Not
yeah,
impressed.
yeah.
Everything's got a negative, Dan. You know that.
So speaking of right, he and Thompson combined for an 11-0 run to cut it to 56-48. And then a
Yeah,
Shelton three with 7 seconds to go in
yeah,
the third quarter, 61-57. And then McGill apparently fouled on a last second heave. Jackson got a tee for the protestation, and McGill makes 4 free throws. It's really hard to see. There
I
didn't
thought he
look
was
to be a
fouled.
lot.
I thought he was fouled two things. One, both refs called it, not just one. Both refs called it either side, and he put a forearm on him after just as he gathered the basketball. I thought anyway, yeah, close that quarters.
Yeah. So
Quarters.
so so that turned a 4 point game into an 8 point game, and then they
Yeah,
got it back out to 15. But Jackson, the last 5 points of the game, including a three on a buzzer to cut it to 10.
yeah, massive. I mean, obviously, we say that we say that with hindsight now. But even then, even at the time, I thought, if 3 seconds to go, there's no way in the world I'm letting Zach Jackson touch the ball.
Mm,
Somebody else is going to have to beat us. One of the rookies is going to have to beat us. And he made a ridiculous shot.
mm,
It was a fantastic shot, it was a ridiculous shot. But even so, he doesn't touch the ball, it doesn't happen. Um, I thought Sheffield did a hell of a job to win that basketball game, given what they were dealing with, given that they had no Clay, given that Nixon was He, he wasn't playing the minutes I would have expected him to play. And obviously Ricky went off and helped him do that. Um, but I did fear for them a little bit because I thought Leicester would be better in their own gym. And also, I thought, as I say, Leicester lost that game a lot because, to be frank, that wasn't the team they'd been ready to play. And I thought they didn't make, I don't think they adjusted particularly well. They got a little bit frustrated during the game. I thought Jackson's tea was actually a frustration tea at the end of the third quarter. And yeah, I just felt Leicester would be a lot better. And I wasn't sure that Sheffield could survive 2 games without Clay. And with Nixon apparently, not as comfortable as he had been. They were asking a lot. Sheffield had more moving parts than Leicester. That's the bottom line.
Mm.
They got more players. They got more good players than Leicester. It hurts them, right? It helped them a little bit because it mean they got a bit they survived a little bit in that first game. But when Leicester look at the video and figure out who they want to be shooting the ball and what they need to take away and what they need to do better, it's going to help those guys. And that's kind of what happened.
So McGill, 32 points, 11 of 18 shooting. Nixon, 14. Ocherobia, 11 points and 7 rebounds. Thompson, 16 points and 12 rebounds. Jackson, 15. Wright, 14. Wright and Abercrombie were 1 for 15 for 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing, of course. They are slightly better than that.
So let's come to today. Leicester Riders 97, Sheffield Sharks 77 after overtime. Leicester win 172, 162 on aggregate. Thompson active early. Ocherobia got a foul a minute in and came out of the game. Leicester an 11-0 run to lead 15-6, and the aggregate was almost gone in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Tiba does this. I've talked before about it. He used to do it with Tuck, and he's always been very consistent in doing it. I don't like it. Ocherobia got that first foul, and he's been taken out to protect him from a second foul. I didn't like it in this game specifically because he had nobody else.
Mm.
Suddenly, you comment on the commentary. Rotino's guarding him in the switch, or Groves is guarding Thompson. I'm talking about guarding Thompson.
Mm.
For me, Ocherobia had to play as many minutes matched up with Thompson as possible in that game. Ocherobia is one of the few guys in the league who can physically stand his ground with Thompson. He's a solid unit. He's not as quick off the ground and not quite as athletic, but defensively he takes up space. And I thought by taking him out on that one foul, when you don't, if you've got Clay to come in, different from the Fisher, if you've got Clay and then you put Ocherobia in, fine. But when you're suddenly changing your lineup immediately just because you got that first foul, I thought that discombobulated Sheffield and it allowed Leicester to dominate the kind of the physical side of the game for those 5 minutes that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And dominating the physical side of the game, and getting to the rim and getting stuff at the rim. That was the way that Leicester need to be. And when you're down 10, which is effectively a run and a half, a kind of run is about 7, right? So it's a run and a half, right? The biggest thing for Sheffield, and it's something Newcastle did really well tonight, was to keep playing the game, not the aggregate.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, you try and you stay ahead of the game as if you're winning the game. Now, because that helps, because the opposition is always looking at the fact that, man, we're behind in this game, or we're level in this game. We need another 9. We need another 11, right? So that impacts on their mental side of it.
Yeah.
But by allowing them to get to that kind of 15-6, as you say, that run out quickly with a lineup that you probably wouldn't have wanted to have on the court at that point in the first quarter, right? What you then do, you change the psyche of the game, because the psyche of the game is now Sheffield not playing not to lose by 9.
Yeah. Or
to
lose
that
by 9.
not to not to lose by 11. Sorry, to lose by 9. And the psyche, and that is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, the coaches all the time, and they always come up with the rubbish. Say, "Oh, we're just playing the game. We want to win the game." Stuff. But
this game wasn't. So Sheffield had a 7-0 run in the second quarter to make it 33-29, but Leicester came back with an 8-0 run immediately back in front on aggregate. And from that point on, it was an aggregate game. It was not
absolutely
who was going to win today. It was, could Leicester win by more than 10?
And that's the point. And to be honest, those games feature the home team. Again, I'm going memory lane today. We played Plymouth in our We played
Trophy
them.
final.
No, trophy final and also a semi-final, 2011, 2012. We played them in a two-legged semi-final as well in the cup. And I think we were down in both. And you knock the deficit off quick.
Mm,
Once you knock the deficit off quick, they're always chasing the game. And we won. We beat them in overtime in the cup semi-final. Jeremy Bell made a ridiculous three to get to overtime off the glass. And but the home team generally wins.
mm.
It was the same when we played Leicester in the semi-final in 14 in 15, 13, 14,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we won in over. I think it might be an 11-point game, and
Mm.
we won in overtime. And Richard, I think
I think
Harrison Gamble
I
had
think
a
it was
three to win.
12, was it? Was it
The
not 12?
12, something like that. Yeah,
But
Harrison Gamble had a
although
three to
Leicester,
win.
Leicester's when they played Sheffield, I mentioned it on commentary today when they played Sheffield in the quarter final in the 15, 16, was it? Um, won by lost away by 11, won at
Yeah,
home by 11, but then lost in overtime. Nick
Austin
Lewis
Lewis,
on the buzzer.
Nick Lewis's layup on the buzzer. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the game. I remember that game. I remember thinking, how did they lose that game? To be honest,
Mm, mm.
but even then, I still think it favours the home team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I just think I do because the home team, if the home team is up by 11 in the game, they're feeling good.
yeah, yeah. True, true.
That's the
Yeah,
point. It's
yeah.
hard for an away team to come back and make a couple of shots. It's like the scoring race thing, this the favours the home team.
Mm,
So by getting, as you say, into that aggregate game situation, that basically negated the whole of the first leg quickly, and it gives Leicester, it gives Sheffield a kind of a
It also enhances the atmosphere
enhances the
because the
atmosphere.
fans have come wanting to see that. They've got, oh my God, we've got it back. We're going to do this.
Yeah,
Uh,
and players are feeling good. Why are they feeling good?
yeah,
They're up by 14.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So it changes the whole dynamic of the tie.
So Leicester moved 18 ahead on a Spencer Johnson three-pointer in the third quarter. And then Donovan Clay came into the game and instantly gave Sheffield a lift, and they cut the gap to 9 on the day.
Yeah, I mean that's a head scratcher. Just an absolute head scratcher. Um, I'm old school. If you're fit to play, you play. If you're not, you don't.
Mm,
Um, I can understand him not starting, but if he can give you some minutes, he may as well give you the minutes in the first quarter when you try him out. When not sure Robbie is in foul trouble. When that involves such a change to your
mm,
situation. Credit to him for playing. I don't have a problem with him saying I want to play, coach, but it's the message it sends to everybody else that I don't like,
mm.
which is kind of, oh,
It's all
you
gone wrong.
it's all
No
gone
one is
wrong. Yeah,
in. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
all
yeah,
gone
yeah.
wrong. So now McGill's got to play a different way. Nixon's got to play a different way. They got a different guy playing with them, and it's in the middle of the third quarter. So I thought that was, I thought that was optimistic. I thought it was optimistic that he played quite well.
Mm,
He looked like he was certainly impactful in the half court. He didn't seem to be that impacted in the half court. Didn't seem to be moving great up and down the court.
mm,
But he's a big guy, and and he's a talented player, and he wants to play. So I think I'd have had him in the first quarter, see how you go.
mm,
And then the message is, well, if he's given us everything he can. If he can't go, that's fine. He can sit down again,
mm,
but not to be the kind of the white horse, the knight on the white horse and shining
mm,
arm.
mm.
Not a fan of that. I think that just throws everybody else off. And actually, to be frank, it was
Well,
rather
as a commentator, it's Willis Reed stuff,
this
isn't
weird stuff. Yeah,
it? He's
yeah,
come
it
in
is.
the game.
It is coming in the
Yeah,
game. It's like,
yeah.
give what you can, and I don't know. Yeah, it is, but no, I'm not set on that. I think that was it reeked of desperation. That's all I will say, and that's not normally a good
Had an
thing.
instant impact, though. To be fair,
It did,
it
yeah.
did.
Which
Yeah,
is why I'd say it's not the decision to play him that I've got an issue
yeah,
with. Not playing him earlier
mm,
and seeing what he had.
yeah,
And then, but as Rod Glasgow actually stepped up and actually kept him.
yeah, yeah. Glasgow was really good.
Yeah, he stepped up. He made plays. He made passes. He made shots.
Mm,
He was excellent. And again, guy who's been there before
Yeah, yeah,
makes a
yeah,
difference, you know.
yeah. It does.
But
Yeah.
in the meantime, unfortunately, Ricky was having a game which, he just never really got into any rhythm at all, did he?
No, not really.
That re and
Um, and
but
then it was just basic, unadulterated drama in the fourth
yeah,
quarter. It was literally Leicester scored to make it 11, Sheffield scored to make it 9, Leicester scored to make it 11. I think it was 8 consecutive uh, lead swaps, and then
yeah,
it went, and the ninth one was it went to 10. So it
yeah.
was like this is madness. So let's go through the last couple of minutes here. 2:22 to go. I think this is the ninth one, if you like. Groves makes 1 for 2 of free throws, ties it at 154, 154.
Yeah.
You were about to say something, were you?
No, keep
No,
going.
okay.
I watched
Uh,
it back just before this show, so
yeah, so
remember it. Okay, I
so you
watched it
should
back
remember.
quickly.
Jackson going to his left, scoops one up, 156, 154.
Yeah, that was a nice move.
It
Going to
was, yeah.
good Coutinho because he doesn't normally pull that move. He normally goes right, step back, but he went left strong. It was a nice move.
Reese misses a three, but then with a minute and a half to go, he steals the ball from Johnson, runs it back, and ties the scores at 156.
Yeah, and this is the thing you say about too many, good players, and this is a problem. Reece has played pretty well. He's probably not a knockdown shooter, but he plays good defense. He's competitive. He's given them something. But Jeffries hasn't played as a result.
Mm,
And he's getting Jeffries minutes. Jeffries is slightly different. Jeffries is a guy who can maybe knock down 2 or 3 shots very quickly, which you haven't really needed as much when you've got McGill and Nixon and Clay.
mm,
You haven't needed that scoring. You need the guys, the dogs to play around him. You need Jamel and John Routinho and Reese and all that stuff. So Jeffries has fallen out the rotation a bit. But in that game, I thought they needed more Jeffries
mm,
because he stepped up. I think in the second quarter, he had one, didn't have many touches. He had one dribble, knocked down a 15-footer like it was nothing.
mm.
I just thought if I was on the other side, I'd be happy that Reese was on the court and not Jeffries.
127 to go. McGill with two hands pushing the back of Hunter. Two free throws, 158, 156.
Yeah.
113 to go. Clay, he got caught twice in the game with the old hip on the screen.
Yeah.
His fifth foul, unless to get the ball back.
Yeah.
Timeout Jackson to the rim, fouled by Anderson with 54.2 seconds to go, but he misses both free throws.
Yeah, and at this point, Leicester must have been thinking, "Oh, here we go,"
Mm,
because the one probably the least effective 10 minutes of the season that they've had so far have been the last five. Oh, sorry, the last let's say 4 minutes have been the last 2 minutes in each of their home semi-finals.
yeah.
Where things have gone even in the Cheshire quarterfinals, and they only managed to turn the ball over a couple of times. So you
Mm.
expect Jackson to knock them down, and at that point you're thinking, "Oh, here we go again."
Groves misses a mid-range jump shot. There was a right melee for the rebound. Somehow Leicester came away with it with only 29 seconds to go. So they just needed to be sensible and run time. I was surprised Sheffield didn't go into foul mode at that point. I was thinking there's too short a gap between the shot clock and the game clock. But Leicester were, to be fair, teetering on the brink of turning the ball over.
A
Hunter got,
couple of times, and then
yeah,
Jack put his head down again. Not an overly smart play, a little bit of a panic play. Just kind of put his head down and went to the rim and hoped something would happen. A
and
little
he
bit.
didn't. He missed a contested layup, and there's a breakaway from McGill in the open court. McGill will be really mad that he missed the layup. Hunter was really mad because he didn't think he committed a foul. What says you?
I don't know if he committed a foul or not. I
Yeah,
couldn't. He did come
yeah,
across me. He did put his hand in the direction of McGill as McGill was kind of raising the ball up. So I think Ian McDonald said he hit him on the arm. If he saw him hit him on the arm,
mm,
then he must have seen it. But I don't think we could see on the pictures we
mm,
got. I do think McGill should have made the layup though.
yeah, yeah,
He's got
yeah,
to make that layup. What I mean, it
yeah,
wasn't.
yeah,
It was a limited contact, and he had plenty of time to regather himself because it was early on in his steps.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
after his first step, as he kind of pulled the step through move.
Mm.
So he had another step to set himself up and make the. But to be fair, when he then knocks down the foul shots.
He does. 158, 158 with 2 seconds to go. 2.7 seconds to go. Timeout advanced the ball. They got it into Thompson. Bit of a fadeaway, but 15 feet's a little further out than he's usually shooting it.
As you said, a different play. Woo!
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah,
we've all
yeah,
been watching for the last 15 years. I think he's run that before, actually, and he
yeah,
runs it for the duck in. which
Yeah.
is Thompson. So the duck in is when a big guy initially sets screens in, ducks in to, close to the basket to seal.
Yeah.
But what happened was Thompson didn't get close enough to the basket.
Yeah.
The screen was too high. So when he ducked in to seal, he was still 15 feet from the basket. And he's got Archerobia, and you can't move Archerobia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he couldn't get the ball close enough. He catches that ball 8 feet from the basket.
Yeah. It goes
Different.
in. Well, the first shot of the overtime was 8 feet from the
I
basket
think
when
there's
it
a bit
was the
more
same.
actually. I think it's probably the first shot of overtime was about 15 feet. It was a crazy shot, but he makes
Yeah.
every so often he makes one of them and then stares everybody in the crowd down, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
Yeah. 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 And then in overtime, and we
Oh, Dan,
mentioned,
sorry, Dan, we
yeah,
missed something.
what's
We
that?
missed, we missed the first double foul and double
Oh
technical
yes,
foul
indeed.
the
Yeah,
whole
yeah, yeah,
season.
yeah, yeah,
So that's I mean, let's be honest,
yeah, yeah,
a pretty rare one. We can't just step past that as if nothing's happened. This is groundbreaking stuff. Shelton and Clay, I think, didn't they? They
yeah,
got into it and they were pushing and shoving on a rebound, and it was
yeah,
pit take your money, pays you take your pick, really. And Chris Dodds comes in with a double foul for both of them. Just
yeah.
at the same time, I think is it Dave Griffin or Harvey? I couldn't tell. One
I
of
think it
the
was Dave Griffin.
Dave Griffin comes in with a double technical
Yeah,
because
yeah.
after
It
after
might
the
have been
cheating,
actually. It might have been Ian McDonald that called the double technical.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Oh, was it? Oh,
Ian,
okay.
I've got a sixth sense when Ian's calling something. No, it wasn't. It was so the double technical was called because it literally in his face joined at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
So I
yeah,
thought, I thought they might water it down and just do one or the other, but no, refs are going to ref
yeah, yeah,
have four fouls instead of two.
yeah, yeah. Well, he
Yeah,
put both of them onto
four.
4 fouls as
Yeah,
well,
I think
which
it's
was
probably a bigger
interesting.
problem for Sheffield than it was for Leicester, to be honest.
Yeah. Although when Thompson was on 4 and Shelton's on 4 as
But
well,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
goes
true.
to overtime, you're like, where are you going?
Yeah, but they would have wanted Clay on the end on the court at the end. Leicester
Yeah,
really probably wouldn't have wanted Shelton on court at the end. They wanted Thompson.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I say that.
So in overtime, we mentioned that first bucket from Thompson, but then it was the Hunter show. 2 threes. He'd gone 0 for 5 in regulation from behind the arc. He hit 2 big 3s, 8 points in a row. Leicester started 10-0, and that won the tie.
Dan, the biggest thing, and I mean, Hunter made some plays, obviously, and he's a game error. We know that, right? But the biggest thing in overtime is no free shots.
Mm,
Thompson makes a tough shot. You live with that.
mm,
Sheffield never got an open look in the whole of overtime.
mm.
Hunter makes that first three because Reese goes under the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Reese goes under the screen. And I'm sorry, no way. I don't care if he's over 5.
Mm,
Anybody who's been watching games this season know that Jalen Hunter does not shoot the ball differently, whether he's over 5 or 5 or 5.
mm,
He's not one of those guys you can say, oh, he's off, let's just let him shoot.
mm.
The minute you challenge him to shoot the basketball,
Yeah,
the way these guys are wired, right, is that as soon as they see somebody going over the screen, it's going up.
yeah,
But that decision was made for Hunter by Reese.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then what happens? Hunter feels good about himself
yeah,
because he's knocked down one that he's meant to shoot because the guy goes under the screen. So
yeah,
if the coach turns around and says, "Why are you shooting that early in the clock?" Jalen Hunter just says, "He went under the screen," and the coach has to say, "Okay."
yeah,
So
yeah,
because of that, Hunter knows it's a freebie. He
yeah,
knocks it down, and then the second one is off the catch, further out, but he's in rhythm. He's feeling good. They're at home. The
yeah,
crowd's up.
yeah,
All
yeah,
that stuff, and he knocks it down, and that's a ball game.
yeah, yeah.
But the second one doesn't happen if the first one doesn't happen.
No.
Reese is in this game for his defense. He cannot go under that screen. I don't care. No way am I challenging Jalen Hunter to beat me in overtime in Leicester on that. Not what I've seen all season.
Mm,
So yeah, it kind of frustrates me a little bit.
mm,
But as I say, it's the negativity of a coach, isn't it?
mm,
Look at what went wrong as opposed to what went right. He knocked down shots, and we know that he's got gumption, and we
mm,
know that he is a gamer, and we know that he is willful as well. And the willfulness wins in the playoffs.
mm. There now follows a party political broadcast on behalf of the Philip Brown Party. What an advert for aggregate basketball this was, by the
Uh,
way. Because
yeah,
actually, if you think about it, the first leg would have been a 20-point blowout if it wasn't aggregate, because Leicester
yeah.
wouldn't have chased it down the stretch. And this game probably would have been a 20-point blowout because Clay
Yeah,
would never have come into the game because you
yeah, just
just
the
go,
game
oh,
of
we'll
three.
take it to game 3 back in Sheffield or
Exactly.
Leicester, wherever the game 3 would have been.
Yeah,
So,
true.
yeah, it
True.
was
Yeah, I'm
enhanced
still.
by its format. Doesn't
Yeah,
always
yeah.
work, but
No, I think
yeah.
you're not far off. I mean, yeah, I think you're not far off. And it wouldn't have made a difference to the game in Newcastle because to be
No,
honest,
because you won both games. So
won both games, but they were both close. They were both close. No, yeah.
So Hunter 24, Johnson 22, Jackson and Thompson 18 points each. Groves 14, Nixon and McGill 10 each. A combined 5 of 26 from the floor, 0 for 9 for 3.
Well, there you go, and there's your game because they defended them differently because Clare wasn't there because they knew that they weren't expecting Clare to be there, so they were able to pressure them more, stay up there more, and Sheffield, more importantly, weren't able to punish them, and maybe more importantly, Sheffield's guards were more willing to shoot the ball under pressure because they weren't as comfortable throwing the ball down low. And they also couldn't, you can't, what they've been doing with Clare all season is basically splitting, the guards have split at the top and they've given Clare the ball at the top of the key and allowed him to work. Yeah, with his two
Yeah,
dribbles,
yeah.
whatever. That you can't do that without Charobia. That's
No.
not Michael Charobia's game. Right? So that changes everything about what they do. So when they've had pressure in the past, they've been able to get Clay go one-on-one, see if anybody gets sucked in, then the guards can go in. It's a constant yin and yang, and they're doing different things all the time to keep the defense off guard. In this game, Leicester were clued in on what was happening because they'd seen it, and they weren't going to let McGill beat them again. That's what you're meant to do in the playoffs. Now, against that, if McGill makes that layup, it's a different thing. And we're all talking about what a genius move it is to put Clay in the game. And,
Yeah,
it's all confirmation bias.
It's all
But,
outcome based.
it's all outcome based. So, but that's why Leicester, my view, for people who are watching this nonsense, Sheffield won the first game by 10 and lost the second game by 10. And after that, it comes down to individual players, who's going to make a shot and who's going to make a defensive mistake. And, going under that screen on Hunter was a defensive mistake. Particularly when you're a guy as athletic as Reece, who's as good as and tenacious as he can be in chasing people off. That's his skill set. Playoffs do things, and tiredness does things as well. 7 out of 9 for Leicester. That's pretty incredible. I was a bit put about in the game. You talked about continuing the streak. Well, the streak isn't 7 of 9. The streak will be 9 of 9. But so that was
a
my
fair challenge.
Yeah, pedantic. I know, but still, 7 out of 9 is really good. Even if it means we're going to get another one of those sickly kind of sitting on the chairs last photograph of the season that they stick out on the social.
He does like it.
He does like it, doesn't he? But still, it's an incredible accomplishment. Particularly with a team of rookies who's basically 8 deep, 7.5 deep at this point since Bowman went down. Benefited from toughness and benefited from playing through and not having any substantial injuries outside of Bowman. But still, an incredible achievement because there are some solid teams in this league who've got bigger budgets, who are better, and arguably have better talent, and certainly aren't relying as much on rookies as Leicester are. So and to a certain degree, they've been the bridesmaids.
Yeah. I said the nearly team of the season.
The nearly team, but we've now got a real situation next week whereby maybe 4 different teams win 4 different.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen very often, does it?
It would be the 3rd time, I believe, if you read my tweets.
I don't. Obviously, I'm not on that health site. That's
well, what I haven't tweeted out is the 4th playoff final between Leicester and Newcastle, which becomes the most outright. It was tied with Leicester and London on 3.
It's twice, didn't they?
Yeah, 2-1. Yeah.
2-1,
Fab won the first, and Rob won the last 2.
Yeah.
It's the 3rd 2-seed v 5-seed final. Birmingham against Thames Valley in 1998-99, and Chester against Sheffield in 03-04.
Oh, don't remember either of those. Birmingham v Thames Valley, 1989.
I instantly went to the Action Jackson semi-final.
Yeah, Mark Jackson.
When Casey Arena got injured and Mark Jackson but that was actually the year after. So
no one had ever heard of him, and he comes in.
He didn't even have his name on his shirt, and Billy Mims went and pressed up his name on the back of his shirt. But that was 90. That was the he didn't play that year, I don't think. So
who won the 98 one?
Sorry, it would have been 97. It must have been 97, 98 because Birmingham won the 98 one.
Fab won that one.
Fab was on that team, because Dorsey and Lloyd won 96, and then Fab was on the team in 98.
That's right, 98, because he had constantly tons about that. Oh, that's interesting. Second of 5. Not bad. Oh, I've seen that game back actually. There's a ridiculous foul call with 30 seconds to
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
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 absolute nonsense.
yeah,
The foul call.
yeah,
I think it was Martin Gottfried or somebody. Somebody
yeah,
got. I mean, I mean, Christ, we watched the refereeing going back those days, and I know I'm quite sure Alan Richardson can't work a machine to get listen to this podcast, so I
yeah,
can say this safely without being over the head with a rolled up newspaper next time I say
yeah,
Newcastle. But there
uh,
were a couple of calls, and yeah,
yeah,
that was like you go back to watch those like 80s, 90s games, and some of the
yeah,
refereeing is like, what the hell am I watching? It's like
yeah,
may have been accepted then, but it's
yeah,
different now.
yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that game back. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they didn't want Thames Valley to win that game.
Mm.
Um, yeah, okay, wow, it's gonna be good, isn't it? I
It
mean,
is.
crazy. I mean, the good thing about the final, obviously you mentioned the old firm, it's kind of relevant, but it's kind of not. Firstly, um, it's a heck of an accomplishment for Stuttle to get there in his third year.
Mm,
Because he had a pretty rough first year with players coming and going everywhere.
mm,
And they've had a monumental season in relation to that's game number 60, and to do it with, I said one injury helps you, two injuries hurt you, three kill you.
mm.
But to look down, it was Del Pesce in his crutches, Darius in his boot, and Alan Aikens in his trainers. So
Mm.
if that's any guide, maybe
Yeah,
Alan
yeah,
Aikens is the closest to getting back. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but to do that and to keep them going through the year and to play, players down and to manage to put together a game plan to beat London over two and Manchester, to be fair, who are also a much deeper team, hell of an accomplishment. Rob's accomplishments are kind of almost taken for granted now because of the kind of continued success. But basically,
Mm. I would say actually,
he's gone back to having good people
yeah,
after
yeah,
last year.
yeah, yeah. I would
After
say this is probably right up there with anything he's done, to be honest with you. Given the lack of depth and given the
yeah, I
resources
think
available to him,
yeah, that's right. But I think a lot of that is don't. I think once you recruit the right guys, a lot of that
mm,
happens for you.
mm,
And he's had two things. I mean, one, he's recruited the right guys.
mm,
That's getting Thompson as a rookie to be what he's been has been incredible. Abercrombie as well. They just all fit together like a glove. Um, so that's really important. Um, then having them play the right way and
mm.
understand the season. That's also
Yeah.
really important. That's what he does
I,
really well. But also they're healthy. The health
yeah,
is
yeah.
is
I say that in the context of you go back to the team. Oh God, what was it? The team with Bernardini and with Taylor, King,
yeah,
and Andy Thompson,
Sullivan.
and
Yeah.
Sullivan was on that. There's a lot more room for error on
Yeah,
that
well, a
team.
lot. Oh
The
yeah,
room for error on this team is minute. To,
yeah,
to
absolutely.
to
And to
be
be
able
fair,
to get to second place and a playoff final.
yeah, I mean to be fair, and that's where they've lost out, isn't it? That's why they've not been right at the top
Mm,
because they're at the end of some games they haven't had the experience or the
mm,
nous to carry it off in the
mm,
Newcastle and the Surrey games in the semi-finals. Otherwise,
mm,
you'd be looking at winning more than one. From consistency perspective, absolutely, yeah,
mm,
absolutely agree with that. But what I will say is, as I say, they have. Um, and they have bought into, you can see they're a good guy. They're a good
mm,
bunch of guys. They're a
mm,
willful, and that, and so you recruit someone like Hunter, he's an American rookie point guard. We've all seen them. You've seen them about a
mm,
year. I've seen them for years. You don't know what you're going to get.
mm,
How quickly can they adjust? How quickly can they keep everything going? There's a lot to do.
mm,
You got a guy who's like Thompson, history says that if you're as athletic and as aggressive and as good a shot blocker as him, you've probably got a screw loose.
mm,
So you're probably going to hit somebody, and he hasn't.
mm,
We tried glancing below and full aside, but basically he hasn't.
mm,
He's played within control. This is what I like. This is the job why I like them so much is because both Newcastle and Leicester last year arguably had a ton more talent.
mm.
Right, Leicester last year signed an American guy, what was his name at the centre?
Bridges, was it?
Bridges, yeah. He was 25 of 29 when they cut him from the field.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, couldn't stop, a breath of wind.
Mm,
He was 25 of 29. Asbury and all those guys, these
mm,
guys, Meyer and Thomas, all those guys, you would argue individually, one on one, they would beat the Leicester team that you've got now. right? And just the same with Newcastle. There's no way in the world that Newcastle team last year with all that talent beat that London team
Mm.
this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just despite the fact, you've got 6'5" guy playing centre. It's just the spirit wasn't there, the commitment wasn't there, the togetherness wasn't there, and those are the things which people don't see. And we talk a lot about X's and O's on this
Mm,
stuff, but the togetherness and the building of a program and the building of a team,
mm,
and we've seen it with Rob for 15 years plus now, and we've seen it with Mark with GB, and now with his guys. Basically, he's a second year, third year coach, which means that he's beginning to get the respect of people around the league, which means players are more likely to sign for him, etc., etc.
mm,
And they've built that unity and that togetherness, and as such, that's why I think they both deserve to be there.
mm,
You know. So it'll be a good game. I mean, it'll be a better game for the fact that there was a bit of a bloodbath at Newcastle about 3 weeks ago.
mm.
That was, and the Leicester basically handed it to Newcastle,
Mm,
fine. So that means that will have got Newcastle's attention. And
mm,
you think, well, so what if you haven't got anybody you can match up against Thompson? But they didn't have anybody who could match up with Hadzibegovic or Delaire either.
mm, mm.
And so if they got, so you have to say that they have a slightly better than a puncher's chance, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think if Newcastle had got to the final with that, and we hadn't seen these two games this weekend,
yeah,
we'd have a different view on them than
yeah.
we have now, having watched these two games this weekend.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And it'll be a fun game.
Mm,
It'll be a fun game because there's so much different. You go into that gym, that environment.
mm,
It doesn't really come down as to who's the best team or who's got the best players or the best game plans. It comes
mm.
down to the mental fortitude of your players.
Yeah,
Who's ready?
yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know what I mean? Unless they got a lot of young guys. Newcastle got some young guys as well. But I'm telling you now, Cole Long played in college in Canada,
Mm,
He hasn't played. He played in Norway,
mm,
Sweden. He hasn't played in front of 15,000 people
mm,
before. He may have encountered in a high school game. I have no idea. And the same with some of the Christian James. However, he was at Oklahoma. He played for
mm.
Trey Young, so he's played in big college conference games. Everybody's different.
Yeah,
Thompson at
yeah,
Towson wouldn't have played in anything like this. So how do they react to it? How we saw what happened when Bristol got kind of the deer in headlights,
mm, mm.
didn't we?
Yeah,
And the one thing which I like from the perspective of being a Newcastle fan is that basically Newcastle have showed up for every big game they've played this season.
yeah, yeah.
They haven't showed up in a lot of other games when they've been tired or when the schedule's not been right. But if there's been a game to win, outside of the NBL final when the bodies weren't quite there and and they were playing 2 games in 2 nights and they were playing a bloody good team.
Mm,
And they did show up in that game as well and kept it close. But outside of that, they've kind of showed up every time they've played.
mm,
So if Okoro is healthy, even and maybe they can get some minutes out of Aaron Aikens, then they have a puncher's chance,
mm,
certainly.
mm. Right. Well, we'll be back next Monday to review what did happen in the playoffs, because obviously I'll be winging my way back from the O2 next Sunday night. So we will look forward to that. So enjoy the playoff final, everybody, whether you're going on the O2 or watching on the telly. And we'll see you next week.
Bye,
Goodbye.
guys.